Hello England here, and welcome to what will be the first of a small series of videos where I'll be showing you the different captain builds for the upcoming changes in 0.9.11. These, which I did briefly cover in a previous video, and you'll see it on screen now, but for today's video I'm going to be showing you a sort of general survivability build for battleships. So, one thing to note is this build can be altered depending on the ship. For example, you may wish to swap some skills over that you may not need for a particular ship and then move them over to combat a weakness of said ship, and then let's say you've got weak anti-air, but you've got a good enough amount of consumables, then you say may want to increase anti-air instead, so it can obviously be changed and altered depending on the ship, but this is sort of a general sort of build for a captain. Okay, so just for a little bit of visualization to help out with the explanation of these, I've made just a quick spreadsheet showing the actual skills that are going to be there, because I don't really have anything else that have any icons or anything. So what I've done is stuck it in Excel, and I've got 4 columns here, so you can see the tier, the name of the actual skill, the explanation and effect of what it does, so you know how it affects ships, and then a few notes that I've put on the side as well to further explain it. So I've only got one tier 1 skill here, so I mean, also one thing to know as well, this does add up to 21 skills, as it has gone from 19 to 21 total skill points. So the first one is going to be the Consumables Specialist, which is basically just sort of like a cooldown sort of reduction for, well, a certain amount of consumables. So not all of them, but just a certain amount. So it reduces them by 10%, and that affects the main battery reload boost, the spotting aircraft, the fighter, and the defense anti-air fire consumable. So I can imagine this to be quite good, especially say if you've got any of these really. I think just in any sense these will be quite useful. So if you're taking fire, you know, you can either drop, well, this is say from carriers, you can either have say the defense AA fire consumable or the fighter. I mean, you know, it depends on which ship you're using, but I can imagine that would be useful. And as well as spotting aircraft, I mean that would be more sort of an offensive thing, but even so, it will just be a general good skill to have. So moving on to the next one, which is a tier 2 skill, which is Argoside. Well, some notes here, it was formerly priority target, and kind of would be quite good if they kept it at that, because it would be sort of an easy transition to understand, oh, right, okay, it's just priority target, but it costs 1 more. But anyway, this is the same as priority target, so there's not much explanation here, and it just shows how many people are aiming at you at a given time. So, especially for when you're in a battleship, that's going to be quite good, because if you're being hunted by a destroyer, you kind of know when they're looking at you, so, you know, that also gives an idea when they fire torpedoes, but it's just something that really, I personally think is quite good for really survivability. So, speaking of that, the next one is actually a tier 3 skill, and that is Survivability Expert. So, what this does, it accelerates the repair speed of modules, fires, and floodings. And what this does, it just reduces the time of repair, firefighting, and recovery from flooding by 15%. So, obviously, that's quite obvious why you would have that in a survivability build, just for the fact of you take less damage, because any of those 3, they get fixed, well, 15% faster. So that's just going to be rather good. Now, moving on to the next one is going to be another tier 3 skill called Steady. And what this does, it increases the torpedo protection. So, how this affects the ship, it will add an additional 10% of torpedo damage reduction. So, you'll notice when you're looking at the stats of your ship, you'll notice the actual torpedo damage reduction and sort of the higher percent. So, I think some of the American battleships have got quite improved torpedo reduction. So, I can imagine on ships that are really quite tanky and can take a lot from destroyers, this will actually be quite good just because it will buff them up even more. So, that will just make them even harder to combat if you're in a destroyer. And if you're a good player and you can avoid torpedoes, you're going to make it a really, really hard time for the destroyer attacking you. But as well as that, ships that are less sort of armoured, or they don't have such a high value for that, that will just generally improve the survivability of that ship. So I can imagine that's also going to be very good. Now, we're moving on to the tier 4 skills. So you'll notice I've actually got most of these at tier 4, because from what I've seen, they did look quite good, some of the skills. So the first one I've got is the Emergency Repair Expert, and what this does is it improves the effectiveness of the damage control party and repair party consumables, which adds an additional consumable for both. And as well as that, it also increases the action time of both those by 10%. So it is actually quite a good skill. So I can see why it's a tier 4, because it is incredibly good. So the notes I put on this anyway are, so this is like a hybrid of Superintendent and a High Alert. As it's got the reload time of High Alert, so sort of the actual how long it lasts for, And as well as that, it's got the additional consumable, which is what Superintendent would give you, but only for the set amount of literally just being the damage control and repair party consumables. So I'd say, you know, it's very, very good. It is really a hybrid. So I've noticed here, so very useful, say, the October Revolution. I never know how to say that ship, but it is the Tier 5 Soviet Premium ship, and that does have a limited number of actual damage control parties. So I can imagine that'll be probably one of the first ones I go for. Now, the next one is Concealment Expert. So this name hasn't changed. It's the same as it was before, and it has the same effect as well as just a reduction of the detectability of the ship by 10%. So, as I was saying earlier, this can be optional. So, if you're in a ship and it's already got low detectability, or it's something that's ridiculously high and that won't impact it, then you could obviously trade that for whatever the skills you went for. But I mean, this is sort of a general sort of build, so obviously you can take what you want from this. And then the final one is going to be the Fire Prevention Expert, which was formerly Fire Prevention, which also was still a Tier 4 skill as well. And basically what this does, it just reduces the risk of fire as well as reduces the maximum number of fires to 3 opposed to 4. So I can imagine something on, like, say, the Gross Occur first. You would really like this, especially when coming under fire from a Thunderer. And yeah, so fire risk is reduced by 10%. So that's definitely going to be quite useful. So I just think this is quite a good sort of general captain build that you'd want if you just want a survivability sort of build rather than anything should specialise or anything. So just really sort of a first on this. So this is a new format for me because I mean, most of it is speculative. So at the moment I'm making a speculative build. It's the first of these that I've done. So if there's any way you could see that I can maybe improve or anything you'd like to see differently, then please let me know. But otherwise, I do hope you found this useful, and I will be making more in future. So, say for secondary builds for the battleships, as well as the various builds you can have for cruisers and destroyers. And then I'll actually look into what to do with the carriers, although I'm not really very experienced with that, so I'll probably have to do a lot more research into that. But with all that said, I hope you found this useful. So make sure to leave a like if this has been useful, and obviously dislike if it wasn't. So, you know, let me know in the comments if there's anything I can improve on. But that's really it. So if you're not subscribed, then make sure to subscribe if you want to see more from me in the future. And that's really it. So thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.